I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Welcome to the Star Trek Picard After Show, coming to you live from Free Cloud. Welcome. We're so happy to see all of you. I, as I am most weeks, Christian Blatt, happy to be here, joined by Angelica Trey, a Traveler.
Oh,
Not every week. Not every week.
Wow.
Just sometimes.
Okay.
Just sometimes.
Sometimes, yes.
Great to have you back here with us.
Well, thank you.
And making her triumphant return at the opposite end of the desk. Because this side of the desk just can't handle this much
That should be
awesomeness.
too much. It would
Too
be
much.
Too much.
It is Nikki Bailey.
Hey.
And Nikki is in the chat because, as you noticed, Flobo is not with us this week. He provides new content every week at Flobito.com, and that's just too exhausting for him to be able to stay up until 9 o'clock
The
tonight.
brother work hard.
He does. He absolutely
He works
does.
hard.
He,
Oh my God.
wow. I did not
That's
realize.
amazing.
That is amazing.
That was unexpected.
Wow. Yeah.
Do we all get one? Like, is that
yeah.
something we're doing for all
Yeah,
of
that's
us?
on you. Ryan in the booth. We all
going.
need to get one.
I'll work on it.
We definitely need an auto-tuned like A-Tray, you know, I mean, come
I'll
on.
engage in that.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh,
Ooh,
he tries so hard.
engaging.
He's
Okay.
adorable. with
Walking
all
around in his Star Wars
all his,
t-shirt.
all his like
trying.
Jedi stuff. He's always trying. He's trying to do the Jedi.
I'm a Rogue
Jedi.
One over here.
Ah, don't worry, there'll be
Okay.
a Star Wars shout out a little bit later. But as the point I was trying to make is that Nikki is in the chat, and we're glad to see a lot of our friends there. Let's talk big picture, and usually that means overall thoughts on the episode. But we're now 4 episodes into the season, and yes, thank you to everyone who pointed out to us after last week that there are indeed 10 episodes of this season, not 8 episodes. So we are not at the halfway point. We will be next week. So big picture, what people think of the show, I would like to ask Angelica first. So we're 4 episodes in of Star Trek Picard. Overall thoughts on the show?
Well, I think we got a classic sci-fi trope here. We got a Vegas Planet episode. So, yeah, it was kind of fun. It was a little interesting to watch, but still, you know, very slow.
But how do you feel about the show as a whole? Like, so those first 4 episodes, if you have what you like the most and what you dislike the most.
I mean, I'm struggling as a Picard fan because I'm used to the Next Generation, which deals with a lot of conceptual stuff.
Sure.
So I have to just sort of sit back and enjoy this as the epic story through space. But yeah, so we get the Vegas Planet episode and we see brawls, we see,
Sure.
you know, gangs and things here. So, you know, just from like a fun perspective maybe, but it's still going pretty slow.
Well, there being a Vegas planet featured in the story, that would make our producer Ryan right at home. It would make him feel like Star Wars: The Last Jedi. Because,
Yep.
but
Classic trope, I told you.
Whenever I want to give Casino/Vegas Planet shout out, I always go back to the original Battlestar Galactica, the premiere movie, where that was the first time that I really got to see a space Vegas planet, and so it always brings me back to my youth. Nikki, your thoughts? 4 episodes into Star Trek Picard.
I'm not going to lie to you.
Please don't. That's why you're here.
We want the truth.
We can handle the truth.
I don't know if I don't even know if I can handle saying the truth. The
I think
truth
you need to.
the truth is that I am not having the love affair that I wanted to have with this show. And tonight I decided that it feels more like Jean-Luc Picard's Excellent Adventures a la Bill and Ted than it does Star Trek to me. It doesn't feel Trekky to me. It doesn't feel like...
I think I can understand that. I think it feels maybe a little bit more Star Trek adjacent. Maybe it feels a little bit fan fiction-y, because it is, you know, your typical Star Trek series, movie, what have you, novel, any form of media. It's usually a Federation vessel seeking out new life and new civilizations and boldly going where no one has gone before.
Well, also it's dealing with social issues in TNG. Whereas,
well, in everything, it's dealing with social issues. Yeah. This is definitely a space romp. It's a little bit more the it's a little bit more. It's a little bit more like cowboy than scientists flying through
like
space.
a space western.
Definitely more like
fire
here's what it is. It's a lot more like Star Wars.
Yeah.
Than it is like Star Trek.
No, I actually kind of get that.
And I'm not saying that as an insult.
It's a space opera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not even giving it an opera yet.
Really?
I can't get to opera.
Operetta?
There's the drama.
It just feels silly in a way that Star Trek has never felt. Like, I have always taken my Star Trek very seriously and felt a part of and involved. Like, I wanted to be on whatever ship we were on. This doesn't feel like what I want to be involved in, and it doesn't feel like home in the way that I want my Star Trek to feel like home.
Is it JL? Is he disappointed?
Okay, wait. I'm going to tell you right now that the chat has already told me that you are not allowed to call him JLP this episode.
I would never call him JLP. Just JL.
JL. We're not doing JLs. Okay.
Can we just bleep him out every time he says it?
I know, right? Can we?
Everyone will just think he's swearing.
I do feel like Patrick Stewart is having fun. Like, I feel like watching it, I'm feeling like as an actor, he's having a good time.
So I agree with that. And you know what I've long said about a movie, and when you're watching a movie and your takeaway is, well, it looks like they had fun on the set, it means it's not a good movie. It's definitely not a good movie. If that's what, great example, Ocean's 11, the original Ocean's 11 with the Rat Pack, they would do one take and then they'd go back to their dressing rooms and get dressed. You could tell they had a lot of fun. Not a good movie. Not even close. But that's not where we are. What we want to talk about is this episode. And we want all of your feedback to what Nikki said. Do you agree? If you disagree, we certainly welcome that too. But we want to hear from those of you who agree. Let's talk about Stardust City Rag and the triumphant return for a beloved ? Star Trek character that we had not seen in some time. I'm talking, of course, about Seven of Nine, who is, if you know me from this show, Star Trek Weekly, and even Star Trek Discovery after shows, Star Trek Voyager continues to be my least favorite entry in the Star Trek mythos. Just wasn't for me. So she was a part of the show that I liked the least. I thought she was an interesting character, but it just, I wasn't super excited. Like, there are characters I would much rather see. There's characters from Deep Space Nine I would rather see.
We did see some Deep Space Nine characters
in this episode.
Well, like referenced a bit.
Well, referenced, yeah. But I just want to see Odo. But unfortunately, Renee Auberjonois passed on. But so I want to ask you first, Nikki. How do you feel about seeing Seven of Nine again?
I was happy to see her in looser clothing. I bet she's more comfortable now. She's able to move around a little bit more.
A little bit more.
A little more tactical.
A little more, I was excited to see her, excited to see how she had changed.
Definitely changed.
Having the full range of human emotions now, like able to, be more demonstrative in how she presents her, and more expressive, right? I found her more interesting than I found the whole Picard thing. Like, I really want to know what's she been doing. Like, I'm like, Seven, what you been doing out here as a ranger? Like, I wanted to know more about where she was coming from. Like, that's a series I would watch. Like,
I agree. I think it's interesting that she's found this cause, that obviously she's seeing herself as someone who looks out for people that aren't even looking out for them. She's obviously got a particular connection to fight really anyone who might be seeking out Borg implants. So I think that her backstory was interesting, and sort of her sense, her moral values that we see on display throughout the episode, I think are interesting. Angelica, what did you think about having Seven of Nine back?
Well, her name's not 7 of 9 anymore.
You mean Annika?
No, they did say that, but they just said 7.
Yeah, I know.
She's just 7.
She went by 7 on Voyager as well.
I guess it just felt a little different because they introduced her as 7.
Right. It's true.
And then they made a big deal about getting her name wrong or something.
Rios
and
is
they're like, but it's 7.
What is that, 99?
Yeah, 7-11. Yeah. So, you know, it was interesting having her back. I think she was a lot more of like a conceptual, like cerebral, for lack of better terms. Like she was using more of her intelligence on Voyager, whereas in this one she's using a lot more of her physicality. Exactly. She's a lot more physical.
To Nikki's point, I think that her emotions are a lot more at the forefront than when she was recently removed from the Borg Collective. So I think that obviously a lot of her reactions are emotionally based.
Yeah, Renji in the chat is saying 7 definitely has better control over emotions now. On Voyager, she was 0 to 100, no in between.
Yeah, that chocolate cake. Does anyone remember the chocolate? That was chocolate cake, right? Or was it a sundae? Does anyone remember the scene where she eats it?
I actually don't remember that.
Oh, it's epic.
And she kind of like wigged out?
Yeah,
vaguely.
She had a moment.
I don't remember.
I bet people in the chat
She had a moment.
Well, I'll tell you, Herbsta in the chat he disagrees with my feeling like this is not
That's fair.
Trek.
Sure.
He says that, he said the original TNG had a lot of silly and cheesy and downright corny episodes.
Season 1 in its entirety.
Yeah, and he thinks that this generation is having a hard time accepting this new Star Trek, like the older generation had a hard time accepting the next generation.
I mean, I think I understand that point. I just wonder, does a new generation embrace Picard at all? Or is this show really just for fans of the old show?
Yeah. I guess with Next Generation, it's, every episode was dealing with, for the most part, some sort of concept, whether it be AI, can you upload your, consciousness, or can you, download a computer into a person? Can you... morals, ethics, things like that. Whereas in this series, the only concepts that are just off the top of my head we are dealing with right now is android rights, which is something that, androids, artificial intelligence and machine learning and like rights dealing with that, which were dealt with Data on the Next Generation.
Sure.
So it's like TNG, but it's just stripped down and stretched out over an entire series, just one concept. And I think that's a lot of what we're struggling with. And with TNG, we had these like larger than life characters, but they were all restrained. They had such big personalities, but they're all restrained within Starfleet rules and Prime Directive and things like that. So for this, it's just larger than life characters, and it's like, you go off, Rafi's going off saying JL, and so it's just sort of not the same mood or tone for me.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm
agree.
feeling.
Yeah.
Right. No, I think the tone needs to be different because, as I referenced earlier, I mean, this is not someone on a Starfleet mission, and very rarely, sure, somebody would, go on shore leave. There might be, there's, I guess, Star Trek 3, that's a lot of like, basically they need to get back to the Genesis planet, and, that's like a covert operation. But in general, you're operating within the confines of Starfleet. So it's going to feel different, but you're right. There are certainly ways it could feel more like Star Trek. I think that my biggest complaint, by the way...
It was cheesecake, sorry.
It was cheesecake.
According to there was a little debate, chocolate cake, orgasmo cake,
I'm gonna
and
doubt
then
that they
Boston
called
cream
it.
pie. But we've come down to cheesecake.
Narrowed in on the cheesecake.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks in the chat. It's cheesecake.
That's my response to cheesecake as well, honestly.
To the point that I'm mostly enjoying it. I think that the biggest problem is pacing. I think I don't remember if I said this on the show or just before and after the show last week, that through those first 4 episodes. Or wait, this is the 4th. Or is this this is the 5th episode? Yeah. So actually,
we are halfway.
So actually,
now.
are at the halfway point. We weren't last week. That's what I meant to say. Sorry, it's hard to keep numbers straight. But anyway, through those first 4 episodes, the story had moved as far as it should have through 2 episodes. So I feel like we're moving kind of at half speed. I think that there was, to the point that somebody, I think it was Star Drew, made in the chat, there was a lot more action in this episode. We've had episodes without much action. It did not actually advance the story very far.
Right.
But it's, it's a very deliberately paced show. And, I mean, Star Trek usually doesn't move as fast as other science fiction, but it's sort of spread out, and the pacing, even if it's deliberate, it sort of makes sense. You know, there's a lot of time in the ready room figuring out what you're going to do, and then you do it. And this is just sort of like, yeah, we're going to just take our time.
I think this episode was a big episode on sort of like contextually putting like histories, I guess, to certain characters, you know. So we see some backstory to Seven, we see some backstory to Rafi as well, and I think that was just maybe the main push for this episode. Whether or not it pushed the narrative forward or pulled it back a bit or just fell flat, well, you know, I guess that's up to you guys.
There's a lot they could have done in the little shorter episodes that they do online. Like the
short tracks.
Yeah, the short tracks. Like this feels like so much exposition and not a lot. None of it that feels immediately like useful information. No,
and I think it's biased. That I think it's fair to say that none of us at this desk are fans of Rafi. So taking any time away from, Jean-Luc. I almost called him a nickname. Taking any time away from the main story is just like, all right, so she was a bad mom. We get it. We kind of knew she was a screw up. Can we get back to the real story? And I think if it was a different character, I might be more interested. Let's talk about another character that we get to see for the first time, and that is Bruce Maddox, who, when he shows up, I was convinced he was the most interesting man in the world from the Dos Equis commercial. He is a very interesting man.
He had Tony Shalhoub vibes.
Definite Tony Shalhoub vibes.
He did.
And you know, come on, look, you never take a glass of Tranya from a sneaky lady.
I'm just saying.
Come on.
You know, somebody comes and hands you a bottle of something.
Yeah. They're not drinking out of it. What are you doing?
I'm just saying.
Bruce is smart. He's book smart. I don't know if he's people smart.
Well, I think that everything he does in this episode shows that he is not people smart.
Yeah, well, I mean, putting your trust in
somebody who
places,
you know and you care about.
I don't know if you can blame him for that.
We do get valuable information out of him eventually, and we will talk about the covert operation.
A minute of information, pushing this whole narrative forward.
And it's like, so now we know that we need to go to the artifact, the Borg cube, because of that. So he shares everything.
But how did they not? My partner suggested this evening. She said, why did they have to? Why did it take them so long to find out where Soji was? Like, Soji's mom knows that Picard exists, right? Like, and she had gotten into university. They don't have an emergency contact. They couldn't.
Okay, we don't know what the mom's endgame is. I don't think we can trust the mom. Because the mom flat out lies to Soji. To Soji that. Dodge is fine. She got a puppy.
That's true.
I have something important to say.
Please, say it.
So I think it was Bruce actually said the words that the mother is an implant.
Oh, I definitely
she
missed
is
that.
completely
I
an
missed
implant.
that too.
Yes,
Definitely
she is not
missed
a real being. I think she is
Okay.
inside of
Wow,
Soji
I missed
and
that.
Dodge's
So that
head.
is incredibly important.
Yes.
So thank you for bringing that.
You're welcome.
I was too busy taking
You
my
gotta
little
watch
notes.
the subtitles sometimes.
I might have to start putting
Reading
those on.
really cements it in there for me.
So he lets Picard know everything that he needs to know, and quickly we get to see Agnes's endgame, which is that she needs to kill him. And before I ask the question, there's also the reference made before that when he is talking to her after Picard has left. He references that it worked, the work that he, Maddox, she, Agnes, and also Dr. Soong, who, were we to see him, would be played by Brett Spiner. The work that they did together. So that is, I think, somebody that we've been expecting to be referenced or show up in the show. So that's the first mention of him. So we get past that, though, and the fact that she decides to kill him, which clearly she had decided earlier. What are your theories as to what the motivation might be, as to why that would be important for her to do, Angelica?
Well, she got approached by a Vulcan in sunglasses.
Yep.
If there's anything that's more persuasive in this world, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
A
Vulcan.
Do you remember?
You know, I know. When a
A
Vulcan shows up with sunglasses on, you're gonna pay attention.
Vulcans already don't show very much emotion. Now
No.
this Vulcan is hiding even more
think about-
emotions in their eyes with
Just
giant
think about
sunglasses.
how great Vulcans would be at poker.
Oh,
Especially
man.
a Vulcan in sunglasses, because
Oh.
you've seen those people at the World Series of Poker with the sunglasses and the hat and everything. Yeah, no idea. There's no tell.
Yeah, you can't.
Yeah.
You can't say no to that.
So, do you think she was threatened? Do you think she was presented with some information that has yet to been made clear to us, or maybe something else?
Well, she did mention. Girardi did mention that. If you knew what I knew,
Yeah, it was something like
and
I
knew
wish
what
they
you
had. I
knew,
wish
I
they
wish
hadn't
they had not
shown.
told
hadn't
me.
shown
I
me.
wish they
Right.
hadn't shown me. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, so basically you'd seen something that's so persuasive. And,
Yeah.
that is a good poll for me, at least. When I was watching it, I was like, oh my gosh, what is it?
Yeah.
What, obviously we know all the hints towards the destroyer, but is there anything more than that? Is there
No.
anything beyond it? Is there some sort of fate storyline
Right.
in this? But yeah, I figured that Agnes was a little shady from the start, just because we saw that
Little
happen,
too
and then she
twitchy,
just
yeah.
appears in his doorway.
I
You know?
agree. And when she killed Maddox tonight, my first thought was, okay, what did Commander O tell her?
Yeah.
And then, but it also, in hindsight, made me think back to how is she even on this trip? And that's it, right? Like,
Yeah.
like for her to show up at the end of a fight,
And then
safest
shoot
side,
the-
shoot the dude, right?
Yeah.
Somebody, yeah. So I think, like, what is Agnes protecting the universe from?
Yeah. And I like that they established, how stressed out she was earlier in the episode, and how dismissive she was of the emergency medical hologram. I think you shouldn't be able to get rid of them so easily. Not so much when they see you killing someone, but just in general, because a lot of times people are like, no, I'm fine. You're the doctor. You need to take a look. You need to actually investigate the
And
patient.
also, why didn't the EMS show up when they first, beamed up? Like they're like we didn't see it again until much later when she had a chance to kill him. Like I thought it would have showed up earlier since
because he
they
clearly
pop up in all kinds of weird
because
ways anyway.
he clearly needed some help, and
Yeah.
and giving him an ice cold refreshing Dos Equis I don't think actually helped make him feel any better.
Also, putting this out there, I feel like the EMH should have some sort of log that they report to whoever is in charge of the
like
ship.
here's what I just saw.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe Rios will have some sort of insight to that.
I would imagine, but I guess we'll have to see. So go
And they're
ahead.
all programmed to be real, so like maybe he didn't do it that way. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
he
he's
just-
probably hacked the programming because
Right.
he uses them more as I don't even know what he uses.
Yeah,
them for.
Gerald Boney is saying next time the EMH appears, what's going to keep him from telling what he saw?
Yeah, or does he? I guess we have the sense that he remembers things. I mean, I know we knew that with the doctor,
right?
on Voyager, but we still have the impression that that's the case with this one. All right, so we have a very convoluted operation at the center of this episode. That it's fun, little silly, a lot silly, and definitely not particularly Star Trek. And look, there are silly episodes of Star Trek. You can isolate. Every series has their silly episodes. You can go back to the original series with a piece of the action when they're in a planet that is essentially 1920 Chicago. There's great costumes along the way. But this is particularly silly. Ryan, I know that earlier you had the image of what would be Captain Rios, and he looks like he's dressed like a pimp.
Let me find it.
And there was some great.
He
there you
was
go.
dressed
Some
like he was channeling
some great advice from Seven. You need a feather.
a feather, right?
100% right, by the way. Absolutely right. He needed that feather.
Completes the look.
Because he's like full on Harlem, Detroit, whatever pimp.
Yeah.
They didn't let us see his feet, where I was hoping he has on some
like-
Are you a
some
foot-
alligator
Platform shoes,
person?
perhaps.
Are you foot
No,
person?
just a pimp ought to have
Footwear.
a pimp ought to have on some alligator shoes that match
see
the
those
color
feet.
of his outfit.
Ryan,
And I just
can
feel
you-
like it needs
Ryan,
to
can
all.
you indulge me for an image from "I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker" and then
There
pimp?
it is. There it is.
That would be the quintessential pimp. It would be the platform shoes and I believe he has fish swimming around in his shoes.
Oh yeah.
So,
Ooh,
yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
I
remember
loved
those.
that outfit. I did. I saw it and I was like, yes.
If I felt like I could put it together, I'd cosplay that.
Would you?
I
I loved it.
absolutely
I loved
would.
it too. I
'Cause
loved
I
the
don't-
green fur.
Yeah.
What?
On the one side
Yes.
too.
Oh my God. Yes.
Yeah,
All about
and
it.
that's all right if it's a little tricky to find. Right?
Yeah, Star Drew was like, yeah, 70s style pimp. Word up.
It
That's
was-
exactly what it is.
It was yeah, I loved that outfit, but it was a little interesting seeing all the other disguises, and then obviously I think we've passed off the role of comedic relief from Agnes to Eleanor.
Mhm.
Definitely.
Bless
It's
his
just sort
little
of a
heart.
trade-off, and now Agnes is like, I'm shifty and dangerous. And Eleanor's like, well, I'm Eleanor.
So Renji
Yeah.
in the chat has a cool conspiracy theory that he thinks they think it involves the synths and the Borg. People fear that these synths will take over, but could they just be the next universal evolution?
I mean, yeah, look, I think it's there's a lot of speculation in the middle of all of this. Anyway,
You're saying in terms of artificial
Yeah.
beings that the Borg and the synths are going to
Yeah.
combine?
That I'm wondering if maybe there are more of these synths out there. I like this theory because what it made me think was maybe there are more of these synths operating as humans in sort of places that we wouldn't suspect.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
maybe they're doing some shady stuff.
And
there.
I mean, I think there is an interesting. I mean, there's obviously a clear line drawn here between we've got the synths that are entirely artificial beings, and then we've got the Borg, which are partially. They're obviously it's a play off of the word cyborg. So yeah, I definitely think there's some sort of back end here with artificial beings or partially artificial beings.
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh,
and
Lord.
this is waist up, so this is going to be very helpful, though. This is, to me, that's what I think when I think pimp from I'm Going to Get Your Sucker. For those watching on YouTube, obviously, if you are just listening, you need to certainly Google this from
Yeah, those were
a
the
great film.
shoes.
Yeah, you can also see the shoes. So, anyway, I don't want to spend forever on that. It's just, it made me think of
Nice.
it while we were talking. And yes, as I've recalled, shoes with platform shoes with goldfish in it. So, and we were talking about sort of that amazing costume, and that does bring me to Jean-Luc Picard's costume. We don't really need to dwell on the accent, but just the look of it. And Ryan, this would be the tweet from Kate Mulgrew where she's retweeting someone, but they actually asked the question of who wore it better, and Kate Mulgrew tweets out, "Think very, very carefully before you answer this." I think she looks much better than he did. It was
You're Janeway?
yeah.
Or sorry, Kate Mulgrew.
That's
sorry.
Kate. I don't think that's her as Janeway. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
that's another
No,
role.
I know. I was just
think
like,
that's another role. Yeah.
I'm in Star Trek mode. I guess I looked
Yeah,
over.
but of course, yeah, she's Janeway. Yeah, yeah, and it didn't look good. And again, this is my Star Wars reference. It's such a bad disguise, and it reminded me of something. And if you get this reference, anyone out in the audience, then I appreciate you being as much of an attention to detail person as I am. So it comes not from a Star Wars film, but the original Star Wars comic book published by Marvel Comics. And I grabbed two images that I sent to Ryan. It is a disguise that would be used by one Lando Calrissian as a bounty hunter named Drebel. And there are two different images. One of them is you just see it's Lando in a bad white wig. But then when you get a closer look at the other image, that again, this is for people on watching on YouTube, not only does he have an eye patch, but he's dressed like Prince. So yeah, look, it's a great look for Lando,
Doing
but
that purple.
it just made me think of like, what's the most ridiculous, unbelievable costume I've ever seen, apart from Wolverine going around as someone named Patch at one point, where it was just Wolverine with no mask and an eye patch. These are all pretty bad. So, Jean-Luc, you are in very, what's the opposite of elite? you're in bad company.
Yeah.
That is a terrible costume, an awful accent, and he is one of the single most recognizable faces in the galaxy. I would say probably the best known living member of Starfleet at that point. Where we are in the show,
Right.
no one living is better known than him.
He is a French space pirate, okay?
Yes.
He rocked it.
But he could not. He was just. There was no recognition.
Star Drew is saying, did you forget about Khan's eye patch in Star Trek II, the movie?
No. That's all fine. No. That's fine. We're talking bad stuff right now.
he's
By the way,
talking
Khan didn't
disguise.
have an eye patch.
Oh, he didn't?
He's thinking, I think, of Star Trek VI, the Vulcan that had the eye patch that was like basically stapled to his face. But I tried not to let myself get too distracted by Picard's awful costume.
The accent was...
The accent was the worst part.
It was just...
They're really pushing the French thing with him. I think.
And I again looked like Sir Patrick Stewart was having a lot of fun.
great time.
That does not mean that this was a good sequence in the series. But we were talking about something, the three of us, before the show, that the adversary in this episode, and I'm sure one of you have her name in the notes, that I don't want to get it wrong, partially because it's...
Bejazel?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it sounds a little bit like slang for, let's just say, a part of the anatomy.
Oh, I was thinking like bejewel.
Oh, good for you.
Because
Yeah.
like, she's
I-
all covered in
Yeah.
I
diamonds.
went with Bejewel too, but
Yeah.
I now know where you
Well,
Where your
I was
mind
talking.
goes.
I was talking to one of your roommates about this.
I know where
and
one of your
so
where your mind goes. Okay.
Stephen put that in my
Yeah,
head.
Stephen would.
Yeah, I'm gonna blame him.
But like, come and talk to
The what we
woman
were talking
and
about
Bejewel.
was how difficult it was that they cast whomever that actress is that looks so much like Marina Sirtis, aka Deanna Troi, and you're just like,
Yeah.
what?
I was so confused.
Yeah.
I was sitting there just
Troy's bad now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it took me a good couple of minutes to realize it wasn't her.
And
I
we
was
know
like,
from the trailer that she's
gonna
going to
in
be
it,
on the
right.
show. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, wow, that's some good CGI. They made her look. Oh, that's not her.
I feel like
Yeah.
they traumatized me with that because I was like, wait a second. Like I was going through, I couldn't even focus on the storyline. I was just going through this like mental turmoil of, is this Troy? Why
Right.
is she Bejazel? Like this doesn't seem in character, but obviously, you know, we see in certain timelines like she's not around, but we know she's in it. So it was very confusing.
Very confusing. Let us know in the chat if you were similarly confused by that. The ultimate decision, bringing it back to that character, the ultimate decision of, Seven allows herself to be talked out of killing her, going back up to Picard's ship. At what point were either of you convinced that she was going to go back and kill her? Was it when she asked for the phasers, or did you already expect it before that?
When she asked for the phasers.
Yeah.
For me, I was like, what? She don't need phasers. She's getting picked up by another ship. She's
Yeah.
She's
She's
going
gonna
back.
be okay. Yeah. What did you think, Angelica?
Yeah, pretty much the same.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's like, oh, there's only she's
You're like, okay.
yeah. And then it reminded me that in the preview for this episode, it did have that shot of her with the two guns, and if I had remembered the trailer that well, I'm like, we haven't seen that yet. So yeah.
Renji also said, he said, oh, I wasn't the only one who thought she was Troy. Yep, we all did.
No, yeah. I mean, fairly quickly I had to decide that okay, this can't be her.
It was just very similar features.
Very similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was unfortunate and it was very confusing, and I'm not sure exactly what happened there on the casting end, but
They were convinced it didn't look like her, I guess.
I guess, yeah. So I was like, is she a betazoid? Like, what's going on? At least, like, I don't know. I don't know. It was a little confusing.
Yeah, I
and
was like, ooh,
frustrating.
cool, an evil Troy. That could be fun.
That could be
Yeah.
fun.
But, yeah.
Like
What
an
did
evil betazoid or something.
Right. What did you think of Seven's actual decision and carrying it out and actually killing her at the end of the episode? What do you think that says about the character and where she is now? I guess it's about 20 years or so since we last saw her. I'll ask you first, Nikki.
It made me want to watch the series of her last 20 years. It made me want to dive into her story. I'm like, here's a character that we know, we love, and she's doing something super psycho,
Yeah.
How
But
did
at
she
least
get
she's
to this
doing
point? But she's
something.
doing something, right? I was like, oh my gosh, I wanna watch that show. I want to know that relationship that she had a child. Like,
Yeah,
I want to get into that.
And they don't really dive into the fact of the nature of their relationship. The fact that she had a human name for her, I mean, not even just old Seven. So she has this name, Annika. Was that her name, when she was human the first time? Right. Is this a new chosen name? So it did raise a lot of questions. What were your overall thoughts about basically for Seven, at least for right now, we just really have this episode as her arc?
I mean, I really liked it. It just kind of established her as a bit of a, hardened,
she's a very different character now.
Very short, and she's not going to take anything.
Right.
So
she's a different character now, but you believe that she would get to this point.
Yeah, we know now that she's going to be, she's going to get the job done for anything, and she's super hardened about it. And I think it was great because we were able to, as previously mentioned, we got some callbacks to like Icheb from Voyager,
right.
Whom we last saw in the Voyager finale. So it was kind of cool to see him brought back in, and then also we got to another Easter egg like reference, Quark.
Yes, the reference
Rios.
of Quark. Yeah.
I loved it. Yeah, so I just wanted to throw those little Easter eggs in there too.
Would love to see some Ferengi at some point, because why not? We haven't.
Oh
yet.
yeah,
Sure.
those nice lobes.
Yeah, I do.
Those sweet lobes.
sweet lobes. So
I want to hear about those rules of acquisition too.
I miss Quark a lot, actually. Not Nog so much, but Quark.
Quark's weirdly lovable.
Yeah, somehow. So yeah, I thought it was interesting, and that's the one thing that it made me realize that this show is able to do. Usually when you're going to get a very different take on a character, it is because you're like looking at the mirror universe version of them or something like that. But instead, this is like, well, so much time has gone by. This person is very different. So it'll be interesting to see if maybe any of our beloved members of the crew, like maybe Geordi, is just totally different now. So it'd be great to see. And we will have to keep our eyes peeled for the future as to, what we get in the weeks ahead. There are now 5 more episodes because we're 5 in. We got 5 more. So we'll talk about that. But before we go, we should pick our engaging moment of the episode. I will ask you first, Angelica. What was your engaging moment?
My engaging moment was when Seven was talking to Picard about how they were previously Borg and whether or not they actually had, re-attained all of their humanity. I think that was really meaningful. Yeah. Because
she asks him, did you retain your humanity? And he says yes, and she says all of it. He says no.
That was the one part in this entire series so far that's made me think, and I loved it.
I think that's some great insight.
I agree. That was my favorite moment as well. I felt like, I connect to that really deeply, and that felt so Star Trek.
And I don't think
exactly.
I don't think we ever had a hint of that before in the, I don't know, whatever it is, 25 years since Best of Both Worlds, since he was Elocutus of Borg.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think, actually, I guess, right afterwards, he was having dreams and things, but I don't think the idea...
deal.
Yeah, I don't think that I ever had the sense of, he's still pulled to it, so... it'll be interesting to see that play out. Well, we are out of time for this episode. Oh, no, sorry. And for me, it's very simple. I just liked that 7 and 9's drinking bourbon now. I just thought that was fun.
Yes.
It's a very minor character thing. Yours was better. But anyway, and shout out to Jonathan Frakes, who directed yet another episode of the show. Anyway, that is all the time we have for this week. But we will be back next week at 9 Pacific for episode 6 of Star Trek Picard. Nikki, where can people find you until then?
You can find me at Nikki Bailey _ on all the social medias.
And Angelica, I hope you'll be able to be back with us soon. But until then, where are people finding you?
The people can find me on most social medias at AYYTRAE, Twitch included, and Instagram. Sorry, I did Angelica Trey.
And you'll be able to find me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. And for just a very different, weird look at the world, tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific time, we'll be doing a special Friday edition of the Trump Report. So why not check that out? There's some interesting things going on in the world of politics. But we'll see the rest of you next Thursday at 9. Until then, live long and prosper.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.